Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. I've been thinking about the idea of being infamous and how it's actually a nice thing, especially compared to its ancient counterpart, but we'll get to that in a minute. Let's take a fairly regular, widely known, infamous person. Richard Nixon. That's right, the former president of the United States. Now, he's infamous for a few controversial decisions during his time in office, but mostly because of the whole Watergate scandal, where he was stealing information from the Democratic camp, using it to his benefit in the next coming election campaign. And that's what he's infamous for. They were able to paint him in a pretty negative light. And that's one of the reasons he resigned being the president and stepped down. Now, looking at literature, there's two real ways of looking at him. The movie and the comic book, The Watchmen, that portrays him as a fairly power-mad individual. When he's looking at the scientists resetting the doomsday clock, he says, "Who are these assholes that think they decide when doomsday is? I decide when doomsday is." I think it's a very stunning portrayal. But then in Doctor Who, where the Doctor has a fairly amiable relationship with Richard Nixon, so tells him, "Oh, Dick, tricky Dick, they're never going to forget you." And that's the point. 50 years later for sure, Richard Nixon's legacy is assured. He will never be forgotten. Some more recent examples. You can look at Mr. Clinton, former President Bill Clinton. His name is fading from history a little bit faster than Richard Nixon's is, but he's known for his own questionable decisions while in the White House, specifically with who to consort with. Now, there's all sorts of rumors of other things, but he's on the infamous side. But I can imagine him being lost to history aside from a couple references in a history book. The 45th president. Well, we're still going to see how history remembers him, and I don't think any of us will know in our lifetimes. Whether you're 18 years old or 80 years old, yeah, this will be history re-examined over and over again. But it's a perfect example of being infamous. He's more known for the how do we even put this? I don't want to say bad, because that is a judgment that I don't feel qualified to make. So I'm going to say the extremely questionable decisions that he made. Like his so-called wall, which is currently $750 million of scrap metal. Because they bought the metal, they started building it, and just like Silverlight predicted all those years ago, there was no possible way you could build that in 4 years. You can't build the roads to get the people in to build the wall in that time, much less get the material and the people. The food for those people, the lodging for those people, that's all an intensive undertaking. And a lot of that wall is in pretty unpleasant areas, so the amount of pay you would have to give those people is insane to get them interested to build that wall. But that's okay. Now we have this rusting steel, which should come in handy if we ever need to build a new battleship or a bunch of planes or something. The ancient times weren't quite so nice. The Romans had a practice called damnatio al memoriae. Now, I might be pronouncing that wrong. My Latin is a little bit rusty. But basically it means the very memory of you will be damned. And if there were inscriptions to you, they would erase it. If there were awards given to you, they would be struck from the records. If your name was on a tablet, the tablet would be thrown out and destroyed. Literally, they would go out of their way to erase the memory of you. Pharaoh Akhenaten, another one. Pharaoh Akhenaten of Egypt, I think in the 1370s or so, ruled for less than half a dozen years. But he was almost written out of history because he had this heretical idea that the ultimate god was the sun disk. Now, please note, the sun disk is separate than the sun. So they were not strictly speaking sun worshippers. They were worshipping the power behind the sun. You might know of his son, Tutankhamun. Akhenaten, Tutankhamun. Because they were both dedicated to the god Aten and Amun. The difference is Tutankhamun, we know, was assassinated, and nothing tells us what happened to Akhenaten. His memory was so bad that it's rumored that there's a curse if you even say it. I'm not afraid of a curse, because I've said his name often enough. But it's interesting that his tomb did not have a royal burial in it. It laid vacant. The records of what he did were lost for millennia. And even Tutankhamun, his burial was lost right up until the 10s, 20s? Anyways, just about 100 years ago. That's thousands of years in the desert where nobody knew he was there or what he was. The rumors are that Tutankhamun was assassinated. And that's because his wife wrote to the Hittite kingdom, ostensibly an enemy kingdom, one they had often had fights with and wars, and she asked for them to send a prince so that she could marry a prince because her own husband had died. And she was being pestered by one of the warlords who was of the common folk to taint her royal blood. We know from Hittite records that that prince was ambushed and killed on the way there, and Tutankhamun's wife doesn't really appear in royal history after that. Instead, one of the warlords rises up and establishes a new dynasty. That new dynasty, of course, it was to their record to eliminate Akhenaten and Tutankhamun from the bloodline, because that way they can say, hey, they didn't exist, so we are the only bloodlines. See, bloodlines are very important to royals. And showing you have a connection with one of them is actually a bit of an obsession for them. If you'll notice, King Charles, he has a middle name of Arthur. Prince William has a middle name of Arthur. Because they want that legendary association to be able to say, even though they're a family from Saxe-Coburg in Germany, they're still trying to co-opt English, not English, because English is Angle-ish, the Angles, as in Anglo-Saxon, whereas Arthur is a Welsh and Bretonish myth. So they're really trying hard to fit their place in that family, just like many others before them. The English monarchy has gone vacant a few times, and they put a few pretenders in there that have worked out pretty well to the modern day. What this means, well, basically, people like you and I are going to be forgotten in a couple hundred years. Maybe some of us will do some things. They might name a park after you. Although, no one's going to know what the park was famous for. We have a few parks in my local area that people are... well, people don't really care why they are named what they are named. They just, Dover Park. Well, who was Dover? Do they mean the White Cliffs of Dover, or do they mean the family Dover? Your average person just says, I don't know. See, even something that was established less than 50 years ago, nobody knows the meaning for. They go through the park almost every day, maybe less so during the winter, but they go and enjoy it, and they have no idea and don't care. We've achieved a damnation al memoriae just by letting time do its work. People attempt to give themselves a greater history than is reasonable. We're all glowworms. We come across at the middle of the night, we light up like a million little bugs, and we disappear. But don't worry, another generation of glow bugs will come along. The pattern may look similar. Heck, some people might even like it more. But the fact is, unfortunately, for the vast majority of the human species, most people remember their grandparents, maybe their great-grandparents, but their great-great-grandparents, if anything, their family remembers one or two stories. And that is the fate of most of us. So remember that when you're on the line, nothing's ever going to erase whatever you're writing online, but that doesn't mean people are going to care to look it up either. You might have some fantastic opinions. You might have some incredible facts. Hell, I was looking up the other day, and there was an email conversation from 1990 that had been archived. And it was about a game, by the way, a specific ruling for one situation in a game. So, yeah, it's amazing what's there, but you'd have to be looking for a very particular situation to run across it. So when you're on Facebook and the other guy's being nasty and all those other things, you know what my favorite tactic is? Just to say, all right, you think what you think, I think what I think, and there's no point to continuing this conversation. And I cut him off. And it's funny how many people continue to post after that. It's very funny. Because they're still pursuing this idea of their immortality through the internet, when in fact there is none to be found. At least not immortality in the way that we understand it. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Don't forget to buy a book down in the comments, and the link down in the comments below. And we hope you have a fantastic day.